The only podcast you can truly trust.
Matt, how are we doing today, mate? Great to have you in. How's things?
Stressful, very stressful. It's been a busy day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone's feeling that way at the moment. I think it's pretty unanimous out there that stress and anxiety are an all-time high. So it's great to have you in. And what we're going to talk about today is stress and anxiety, something that I think everyone from every walk of life, every age, every nationality experiences, albeit in sort of different
Stress
levels.
does not discriminate.
No, absolutely not. It comes for us all. And I think it'd be really great to educate the listeners and kind of give them a bit more information on kind of why we feel these way. I think it's so important to get an understanding about the importance of stress and anxiety, why it is important, and then also have a bit more of a look at why it's an all-time high. What are the signs of stress and anxiety? And ultimately, I think we're going to give some really great recommendations on how to manage it, what we can do to reduce it, and hopefully the listeners at home get some great tips that they can share with family and friends. And, if it just makes your life 1 or 2% better, then I'd sleep pretty happy saying we've done our job, right?
I definitely need some of those tips right now.
Yeah,
It's been a tough day.
Is there anything particular that's making you feel stressed out at the moment? Or
it's just life, mate. Life.
Just that never-ending grind.
Never-ending.
Yeah.
But I will say, researching this episode, and there's a few things that I do want to bring up here. There's a lot of this I'm going to take home and try myself.
Yeah.
And I've done some of the breathing techniques as well, and I really do find these are going to be great things for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've touched on it in previous episodes, I think, as well. Like, I associate my physical health and my mental health so closely. But, my partner over the past few months, she's really got me into mindfulness, meditation, manifestation, all those things that 6 years ago I'd have been like, what are you talking about? But actually, I've been doing it consistently for a few weeks now and really finding some tremendous benefit. And I think in combining, a good sort of physical routine, mental routine with adequate supplementation, I think you can really make a huge difference to your life. So I think first things first, Matt, what is stress and anxiety? It's words that we hear pretty much every day in the modern world. But give me your ideas. What are your thoughts? What do you think stress and anxiety are, if you can encapsulate it?
It's difficult because I've put it as that there's two different types of stress, and I've called one is pre-evolution stress. So this is what our bodies have been made from. It's essentially when back in the day when we was going for food and a bear come out of the woods and tried to kill you, your body was like, oh my God, I need to get away from this. And doing so, it released adrenaline, which gives you a spike of energy, and cortisol, which turns off parts of your body, stops you ingesting food and stuff like that, to help you get away from that predator.
Yeah.
That's what it did. And it worked fantastically. We're all here today because of way back then, people did get away from the predators.
Because our ancestors used their stress and cortisol correctly, and they were the lucky ones who survived, whereas the other idiots died. So, yeah, that's kind of how I interpret it. It's, I think human beings have been around for what? If we say about, I think it's like 300,000 years, something like that. So, stress and anxiety is there. So back in the day, your great ancestors, the saber-toothed tiger came a-running, the adrenaline went so that they were able to focus, the fight or flight instinct came in, and then cortisol was one I'd never really looked into, but like you just touched on there, it sort of takes the functions away from organs and parts of the body that don't need it at that time and pushes it where they do. So like you just touched on, when the saber-toothed tiger or the bear comes running, you're going to stop digesting food, you're going to stop worrying about other problems you've got, and everything goes into that fight or flight response so you can just get the hell out of there, or if you're feeling up to it, grab that spear and try and take them down, get a hell of a coat for the winter from it.
It's like when there's a war on, it had it back in World War II in this country, things that aren't essential, people move away from that. We don't need someone making cakes. We need someone making bullets. That's exactly what cortisol does. It stops the immune system. It slows it down, puts that energy instead into doing things that are really, really important, which in this case, from a saber-toothed tiger, is you need to run bloody fast.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So and I think that's the really important bit that we want to kind of hit home with people, because I know stress and anxiety, they're negative words, but actually there are benefits. It does aid performance, and ultimately, like we kind of touched on, that's why you're here. You're here because you had ancestors who used their stress and cortisol levels to get them out of some really hairy situations, and ultimately, it's a survival instinct, really, isn't it?
Yeah, which is now where the issue comes in modern day. I don't know about you, but I have never really had to run away from a saber-toothed tiger before. So this cortisol in my system isn't that useful anymore.
Absolutely. In my day-to-day, I run away from very few tigers and bears, and this is where I think the transition to the modern world is coming in. Instead of running away and having these huge adrenaline spikes and cortisol from running away from a dangerous predator or anything like that, or a rivaling tribe, well, now you're getting these spikes because you get a really prickly email from old Karen down in accounts or whatever, or you have a customer who's phoning you up and making demands, and the stress and those cortisol, the activation is still the same, but it's just the triggers are what's changed with the modern world.
Yeah, and the way the body works is back in the day, when you got away from that animal, your body goes, right, I'm away, I'm in safe, it's peacetime now, we can calm down, we can go back to doing our normal jobs again, we can stop making bullets and we can go back to baking cakes. But when you're in a workplace, you don't get away from that. The emails are always there.
The emails never stop.
They never stop.
I answer one and three come in its place, and absolutely.
So there's no trigger for the mind to go, right, I'm away from this, I can calm down now.
The danger has subsided. No, when as long as you're at the laptop, you're like, any second now, Miles is going to send us another email being like, another bloody podcast, all right.
Yeah, so this is where the issue comes, where people don't, your mind naturally isn't switching off. If you're a person that does get triggered, and your triggers are work emails, because some people are immune.
Yeah.
Some people, they can just fight it off regardless. They're built for that.
I always ask them. We've got a few people who we work with where they just never phase, and I love to ask them and just to be like, just how do you deal with it? It is a large amount of kind of just shutting that part of their mind down and not letting it weigh on them. But I think stress is something we all have to deal with, and I don't think it's always a bad thing. I think under stress, you work better, you perform well. It can really breed results. But like you're sort of saying, I think the problem comes in when it's just constant, when it's chronic, when, let's say we have a really busy afternoon, you get a load done, you hammer out an immediate project, brilliant, job done. But you can't have that 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, constantly live in that state. And that's what really leads to anxiety. And that's where the mental health issues are driven from and things like that.
Yeah, high cortisol levels will affect your sleep, and there is an endless amounts of studies on the damage a lack of sleep can do to you. High cortisol levels also raise your heart rate as well, and there's lots of issues that come with that, high blood pressures. There is an endless list of problems that come from having constant amounts of high cortisol in your system.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to kind of summarise that bit, is back in the caveman days, it was high amounts of stress, but in short bursts, where you got out of the situation fine. Whereas now we're having much more prolonged stress and anxiety, and I think this is ultimately what's grinding people down. And I heard, sort of researching the podcast, I found an amazing quote. I would love to take credit for it, but stress and anxiety, it's the mismatch between ancient instincts and modern stresses. So that's it. It's that caveman fight or flight, but you're bringing that level of intensity almost, and that level of stress, into your day-to-day office job. And you know what? I've always thought this. I think I've got this theory, and I think everyone, no matter what you do, we all experience the same level of stress and anxiety. And I think, there's paramedics who are there pumping someone, clear, poof, clear, and their stress is like a 10 at that point. But also, I think, and I'm going to go in on the Karens here, I think there are Karens out there who don't really have any real problems in life, but to them, when they go to the supermarket and they're out of Lurpak, to them, that's their, they're always going to hit that 10 at points anyway. And that's why you see, people kicking off at, poor restaurant employees or people at the supermarket because, oh my God, what do you mean you don't have any Lurpak left? And they are feeling that same level of stress that the paramedics feeling is they're reviving someone. And, I always make jokes. I think, we all have hard times and difficulty at work. And I like to imagine, there's a keyhole surgeon saved a child's life. God, what a stressful day. They get home to their partner and they're like, oh, Matt, how was your day at work? I saved a child today. How was yours? And you're like, hard day at the ice cream tasting factory. Yeah, God, it was vanilla after lunch and then honeycomb at 2 and then I had to do chocolate. I think everyone, no matter what you do, will encounter stress. I don't think there are people without stress. And I think people without any real cause of stress, this is where we get Karens and social justice warriors and people who kind of flip out over nothing because I don't think they have an avenue to push that emotion in. That's my kind of logic on it.
Like you say, pent-up anger. It's actually like pent-up stress. It's like unearned stress that you haven't given a release to. Because if you are in a stressful situation, saving someone's life, when you've put them, the person back into the ambulance, you've saved their life, done a great job, and put them into the hospital, you're like,
Oh, yeah,
release.
absolutely.
The end of a long, 18-hour surgery, release. The end of your tasting ice cream, well, there isn't one. So you've got that built up, and it's just not healthy.
Yeah.
So people need to find these ways to release this, and not in a way that requires shouting at someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're definitely going to do a deeper dive on that shortly as well, and really look at, I like to think there's probably a triangle here of sort of how to manage stress properly. So we've got definitely the physical side, I think we've got the mental side, and I think we've also got like the emotional side of it as well. And I think it's really important that we work on all of those, and then with correct supplementation as well, you can make a huge difference in how you feel to your day to day. But we've had a look at what's caused stress and why we have it and the benefits there. And if we kind of rework that to the modern world, so we're not running away from tigers anymore, but you get a big hit of adrenaline when you need to tackle urgent tasks, like we said, tight deadlines or sort of, whether they be a real emergency and someone's injured, or whether that be sort of a work emergency at work, something you've forgotten and needs to get pushed through. And it's negative. No one wants to feel stress, but I think you can weaponize it. I think it helps sharpen your focus. I think it helps you concentrate. The ratio that I can reply to emails when I am stressed and I feel really under the gun is tenfold what I can do on a day where no one's really pressuring me.
I think everyone has had that tight deadline. I reckon as every uni student in the world, you've got a tight deadline coming up and it's going to be a problem.
Oh, yeah.
That is when you work at your fastest. Now, this shouldn't be a consistent strategy. It's like, right, well, I haven't really got the motivation, but if I wait until I've got an hour to finish this, I will smash it out. I don't recommend that, but it is a tool that you can use.
Yeah. And, when I was at university, I was exactly the same. I'd be like, 4 weeks to get that thing in. Oh, no problem. I'll start working. 3 weeks. Starting to come around. 2 weeks. And then before I knew it, I was like, fuck! I've got 2.5 days. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, that's when I do my best work. When I'm under pressure, under the gun, it does seem to be when I thrive. Although it's not pleasant, it does breed results.
Yeah. But the issue comes with if you're in that consistent state forever.
Yes.
That's when you'll find, you're older than me, so I can't say when you're older, but in a long period of time, if you keep like that, you'll have big health problems as a result. Yeah. Long-term stress, it will catch up to you eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's where it goes from a short burst of stress into chronic stress or long-term anxiety, which is a detriment to your, to your mind, your mental health, and then also not just to you. I think, when you're having a difficult time, it's not just you who feels it. It's your friends, your family, your partners. Listen, my dog can tell when I'm really stressed out and anxious, or if I've been unwell. They know, and I think that's why it's so important. You might be able to just grind it out and say, right, I can live in suffering for a prolonged period of time, but it's what it's doing to the people around you.
Yeah. And the knock-on effects of, you've got those people around you, you're fortunate enough to have loved ones with you, and they're putting up with your stress. That continues. Eventually, they're going to go, enough is enough, Harry. Calm down.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and they leave you, it's only going to compound the issue, because now you've got no support system to try and help you.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's 10 times worse. And it's funny you say it, because I had the exact situation with my now fiancée, where I did, when I was having a difficult time in life, I'd phone her every few hours. And then, bless her, one day I got to a point where she was like, you know what, I have my own job, I have my own problems. Every time I pick up the phone to you, I've got to be like, here we go. And she was like, it's really bringing me down. I want to be here to support you, but I've got people moaning at me at work, and then you moan when you come home, and it's really affecting my mental health. And I think, selfishly, I hadn't thought about it. Yeah. I was just, in my mind, I was like, well, I'm just going to vent. I'm just going to purge. But actually, I didn't realise how much negativity I was putting onto someone else. And she's like, just phone me up, just flirt with me a little bit. Let's just have some fun. Yeah. So, yeah. And then with the cortisol in the modern world, so you wrote down a couple of really interesting notes here, which I'll let you run through. So, how cortisol sort of works in this modern world, rather than running away from cavemen. So please, run us through it.
Well, yeah, it works. It actually spikes your blood sugar, which helps you push through long hours of work. It's essentially giving you like a mini natural energy drink, a little chocolate bar, which it helps you a lot. Again, when you're in those long work sessions and you've really got to smash something out, you'll notice you get locked in. You won't have a drink of water. You won't go to the toilet. That is what is helpful. It does have a benefit. I don't think adrenaline, though, not controversial, I don't think adrenaline has a place in the modern workplace. Unless your workplace happens to be, in the army.
Ambulance, yeah.
I don't think in our workplace, in an office, I don't think adrenaline really helps.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. Although sometimes I feel so tense, I feel like a grenade's going to go off. You're right. Actually, I think there's very limited benefit to the adrenaline, other than a heightened centre focus. But like we said, it's short bursts that you can work with.
But it's interesting because I think that's the opposite of what the world thinks. Because everyone's like, I want to be an adrenaline junkie. I don't think you ever hear someone go, I want to be a cortisol junkie.
Never heard that expression once. No, absolutely not. So it's really interesting, getting a bit of a better grip and understanding what stress and anxiety is, how it's gone from that caveman time and how it now affects us in the modern world. So we've spoken about, those key reasons behind it. But I think the reason we really want to get on the podcast is I think it's never been more prevalent in our society at the moment. And I think there's some sort of horrendous statistic. It's like 91% of Gen Z show signs of stress, anxiety, mental health issues. And I would personally, and again, I'm no expert on it, I think what I'd attribute that to, and again, the stresses we're facing in office life, is that level of connectivity we have. I think, mobile phones as we know them now and Wi-Fi and everything, it's only been around for the last sort of 10 or so years that we've got this level of connectivity. And, I know I'm a bit older than you, but when I grew up, you went out to school or you went out to play with mates, you didn't have a phone on you. You just agreed, I'd meet at this time or I'd be home at that time. Or if you went on the internet, it was dial-up. It was absolutely dire. But it was free. That's why people would go down to, you go down the woods and make a fire with your mates and, just leave it. Whereas now they're all connected 24/7. And I think it's a very new stage of humanity that I think we're probably not adjusted to yet, which has caused this sense of anxiety and dread in people.
Yeah, and it's we're talking about these, I think, learned hormones that are released in the body over hundreds of thousands of years. It's only in the past 20 years we've had this heightened amount of information. We've got stuff being thrown at our minds constantly at such a fast rate compared to the body's had all this time to slowly learn this, and now out of nowhere it's like, right, here is 100 times more information hitting you in the face. And because most of this new technology is hitting children and younger people, we haven't even built up a way to live a normal life, let alone a life where you've got information, TikTok, like you've got algorithms tuned to make it so your mind loves that thing you're looking at.
Yeah.
And it's like the knock-on effects of that is you're not learning how to cope with any of it. You're just getting bang, 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 and you just get no time to switch off. You think back in the day, going to work, you'd sit and read a newspaper, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd just switch off, or you might just people watch a little bit and just look around, but you would just decompress. Yeah. Now it's like TikTok. Oh no, the tube's got no signal. Well, I'll have a podcast on and I'll listen to music and I'll have something going on 24/7.
Yeah.
You used to be able to switch off. You can't switch off nowadays, ever.
I think it's a perfect point. So it is. You're so stimulated all the time. And I took a pretty good break from social media because I just realised I couldn't watch a movie or a TV show without getting up. I couldn't walk from one room to another without getting my phone out. I couldn't have a piss without flicking through things. And I think I grew up in a time where I didn't have that. So like you're saying, when I was a kid, I'll show my age here. When I was a kid, I walked to school and you just walked and you had a conversation with someone or you walked by yourself. I grew up at a time where you had a Walkman. Do you know what a Walkman is?
Was it the little
CD player? And people forget this. They were so bad when they first came out that you had to hold them perfectly flat. You couldn't even put it in your backpack. You had to hold it flat like that. You weren't going to walk to school like that. So, I grew up at a time where you didn't have all this information. You weren't constantly stimulated. And I still felt it, really take a grasp of me. And I still really struggled to sort of control that. And I think, where everyone's on social media and TikTok and YouTube. And, another really interesting point is when you're out and about for the day, if someone phoned for you at home, and you weren't there, you just weren't there. Or even really in the really olden days, letters. Whereas now, we all know that everyone has their phone on them 24/7. So on one hand, when I get a message, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll reply to that later. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, I need to reply to so-and-so. Oh, I've not replied to so-and-so. And you have a weird thing where someone's just sat there and you get your phone out to reply, but you're just like, you don't bring yourself to do it.
Yeah. Well, I call this decision fatigue. And it's something that's... So Mark Zuckerberg said this. He wears the same items of clothing. Boring old wardrobe because he doesn't want to have to make a decision to wear those clothes. And like you said, you've got to make a decision. You go on your phone and you see those people. You're actively going, I am not going to respond to that person. So... that's a decision you've made. If we say we've only got a finite amount of brain power to make a decision in a day, and you're spending a lot of that going, I'm not going to reply to him and them, and I'm going to reply to you, and I'll do you, and it's like, I've just spent 10% of my day working out how I'm going to respond to people on my bloody phone. It's like, and you never used to have to do that. It would just be like, I might have missed a call, but then that's it.
Yeah. I think as well, the flip side of that as well is... sometimes I'll be a terrible replier, and I do eventually get back to everyone, but maybe it takes me a couple of days. Flip side of that, if I text someone, I know within a couple of hours, I'm like, they'll have seen that message, they're choosing not to reply to me. And, that's pressure and weight that no one used to ever had to deal with before. The thought of having to respond to someone, or the thought someone was ignoring you. You used to just be like, oh, I'll see them when I see them. So, and I think this is why, particularly in young people, anxiety and stress is so high, and it's been in the news recently that obviously Australia have now banned under 16s from social media, which I think speaks volumes to the potential danger of it. And again, I think it's still so new, and we've not seen how people are after being on it for 15, 20 years. But I can say after being on it for a good few years, my attention deficit was really minimal. And, I found myself occasionally checking, social media, just in meetings and stuff, something where I should be locked in, and my mind would just wander everywhere.
I could never imagine doing the 2-hour exams. I could not imagine having to do it nowadays. It must be awful, especially if you're addicted to TikTok. Fortunately, I'm not on it, but I'm still addicted to Reddit. It makes me sound a bit weird, but yeah, I'm addicted to Reddit, and I want to go on it. I want to scroll through and see the new football news that I'm looking at, or whatever. It's like sitting there for 2 hours doing nothing. Oh my God, I couldn't think of anything worse.
And I think I mentioned earlier, a few years ago, I had a really heavy night out, and I don't know how I did it, but basically, phone got really wet, plugged it into charge as I was falling asleep, woke up in a drunken stupor, and I literally saw smoke coming from it. The phone was cooked. I spent about 2 or 3 weeks without a phone because a phone network who shall remain nameless were incredibly unhelpful in replacing that phone. I remember the first few hours, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to live? Oh my God, it's awful. It was the most liberating 3 weeks of my life. It was wonderful. And do you know what? I think in your mind, you're constantly like, but what if there's an emergency? What if this? What if that? How many emergencies do you have on a weekly basis? Mine's very few. And I think I agreed with people. I was like, well, I'll see you here at 6. And well, if you're not there at 6, then I guess I'll just move on with my life. And it was fine. So, I do think there's never been a better time to be alive, and life's never been easier. But I think because of that ease, it's giving all this stress and anxiety. Yeah. But we've spoken a lot about the sort of causes of it and why we have stress and anxiety. But what are the kind of signs? Because I think a lot of people are going around not realising they're really stressed out and dealing with anxiety. Yeah,
and it actually blew my mind when I Googled what the signs were. I made a joke to you about it. I was saying, this is just everyone. And then you think about that, and you're like, oh, hold on a minute, that means everyone's stressed. It's not that this is a common symptom, it's just everyone is actually stressed.
I think your exact words being like, oh, this is just being alive, isn't it? It's just being a human. I was like, well, no, I think this is just everyone's dealing with it.
Yeah, so some of the common symptoms are headaches or migraines, muscle tension, fatigue or low energy, which then in turn sleep disturbances, digestive issues, rapid heart rate, increased sweating, changes in appetite, weakened immune system, and skin problems. So that covers such a range of things there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we can all point to people that we know that have gone through these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say that, it's like you said, sometimes I think, well, that's baseline, isn't it? I constantly walk around 10s. One of the worst things that I'll notice is on my smartwatch quite regularly is it'll be like, oh, congratulations on hitting these active minutes. Now, the active minutes are when your heart rate's escalated and you're jogging or you're working out. I'll get those notifications all the time when I'm sat down just working. It's like, oh, congratulations on hitting this heart rate zone for this long. And I'm like, yeah, shit. I'm sat at my desk answering some emails. I don't, my heart rate can be higher answering emails than when I'm actually physically working out. Yeah, absolutely. But, we've got some really interesting stats. Around 74% of UK adults have felt so stressed at some point in the last year. They felt overwhelmed or unable to cope. Yeah, probably. I can definitely say that at some point. 81% of this was women compared to 67% of men. I'd probably put another 10% on the men's for all for the wide demographic of men that have just been like, nope, buttoning it down, just denying it. 32% of adults said they had experienced suicidal feelings as a result of stress. Yes, I think everyone has. And the list just kind of goes on and on and on. I think we've said how it does improve and it can help work. But overall, I think we can agree that it's a detriment to work and your employer if you're dealing with these sorts of emotions on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. That list of signs, it's just, any one of these on its own is a big issue. If you're having consistent headaches, that is a worry. Anyone tries to do work, if it goes as far as migraines, it's like, that is awful to go through. Or you're getting skin problems because of it, then you're going to probably become a bit self-conscious about how you look, and then you're going to get more issues off the back of that. All of these might be a small individual issue, but it will compound itself into much, much worse. So you might not think that you're stressed, but if you're like, yeah, tell you what, I have been struggling to sleep recently. Look at stress being the first cause of it.
Yeah.
You haven't got a brain tumour. You haven't got something else major, because you always Google, struggling, get constant headaches, you think it's brain tumour, right? It's probably stress.
It's probably just stress. And I think it's, anxiety is the most common mental health issue globally. And, I think you speak to pretty much everyone these days, and everyone's got an experience with anxiety. And okay, yeah, maybe you don't have anxiety, but you certainly have bouts of feeling anxious. Yeah. I know I do. I think everyone does. So, I think it's really important that people can talk about it. And I think that's always the first step towards trying to help and sort of start on a bit more of a healing path.
Yeah, I think a lot of people you'll hear say, I'm really stressed today. But then you won't hear what's next. You won't hear they're doing anything to help.
Here's what I'm going to do to alleviate that. No, they're just like, I'm just going to keep pushing harder. And, I like a grind attitude. I like a hustle attitude. You know this. I like a shark mentality of push through. And there are times in life where you do need to just push and be uncomfortable. But that's for short bursts. That's for short periods. You can't just say, I'm going to live my life like that, because eventually you will hit that breaking point.
Yeah, and I think we've also, as people, as colleagues, you hear when someone else is stressed, you don't go, right, I'm going to try and help relieve they're like, oh, they're stressed. Right, I'm going to leave them alone. Like, this could be the start of something serious. I think everyone needs to take a role in helping alleviate stress in one way or another. Yeah. And I know we've got some great ways to help with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, kind of to summarise, the stress and anxiety, it leads to a serious emotional drain, irritability, high heart rate, everything like that.
Absolutely, yeah. The mood swings it can cause, and the irritability, I think, is a big one. If you think what is a stereotypical stressed person, you think they're going to be a short fuse. Yeah. It's a short fuse, and that is uncomfortable to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's, you want to help people and you want to try and pull people up, but at some point you do have to put up a sort of fence where you're sort of saying, right, I want all the best for you, but I can't have you messing with my head and you dragging me down. And every time I speak to you, I come away feeling 10 times worse because you've just unloaded on me. And, I absolutely love my dad. He's my hero. Man, when we were growing up, that was one stressed out dude all the time. And he was, just like you're saying, he'd flip off at absolutely everything. He'd lose his mind. Any tiny little thing would make him absolutely lose his mind. I remember playing frisbee with him and doing a few bad throws in a row. And he was like, right, all right, that's it, we're going home. Me and my brother just like, I don't think this motherfucker's doing too well. And then, eventually, he had a really hard few years at work, stepped away from it. He's retired now. He's the most chilled, outgoing, like, Fonzie kind of guy I've ever met. And the other day he was talking to me about, he seems stressed. I was like, I've never met this person before. I was like, this is not the man that I grew up with. Like, now you don't work, and you're just like, I was out kayaking and had a bike ride and I did this and that. But I'm like, the whole time I was working, it was really stressed, very tense, very irritable all the time. And it's, and like I said, it is difficult when you don't realise how that's affecting those people around you.
Yeah. And if you've got that mindset of I'm going to push through, it's like, it doesn't help. That actually, when we looked into this, it makes it worse. Yeah. Pushing through, sometimes it's like, that's when you need to take a step back and actually, I need to calm down here.
It's that analogy of, if something was bad enough, you'd let it go and move on to something else. But sometimes people can they'll push through so much but you will eventually hit that breaking point. And I think my dad, again, he was an absolute hero, but he pushed to the point that basically he had a mental breakdown. He just had to walk away from work because he just lived in that grind out mindset for 6 years. Whereas perhaps if after year 1 or 2 he'd have been like, do you know what? I don't think this is healthy. I need to make some changes here. We could have avoided a lot of difficult time further down the line.
Do you think if you asked him, are you stressed? He would say yes. Or would he, but stress? Never heard of it.
I think he'd have been like this. What? Yeah, never mind. Moving. All right, he was like an old school button down kind of guy. But I think that's why it's so important for everyone to be able to just be really open and communicate this. And also as well, everyone's life's difficult. And when we're dealing with our colleagues and our friends, if people are stressing you out, I think it's okay to say, I'm really sorry, I'm feeling a bit on the edge today. I just need a bit of grace, a bit of space for you to just give a little bit of courtesy to me. And people can just be like, yeah, do you know what? I've all been there. I don't want to be the reason someone's crying at their desk.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of self-awareness involved about this, learning your triggers. And first of all, realising, am I actually stressed, first of all?
Yeah.
And I think the answer for a lot of people will be yes, you are. In one way, shape or form. You might be chronically stressed, which means you've got all of these symptoms and you're really, really under it. Or you just have bouts of stress, in which case you need to be aware of that and work out, right, what can I do differently? Yeah. What can I go and do to stop this, or at least reduce it? And if I can't do any of that, how can I stop being a dickhead to people while I am stressed?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that brings us on to the probably the most important part of the podcast and the bit that we really want the listeners to take on board and hopefully share with family and friends. And look, not all of these suggestions are going to be for you, but maybe one or two of them will help you. And like we said, if it just helps improve your life just a tiny little bit and makes the life of those around you easier, then our jobs have been done. So we're going to go over some of our recommendations, like we said. So, physically, mentally, supplementation, everything like that. I think before we do that, I would love to do one of my specialties, which is the unhealthy way of coping with stress. So I think the really common one is substance abuse. I think it's boozing it down. Wash it down with brown, baby. I think someone in the office is using BetterHelp, so the online therapy thing. And I was really interested in it. And I was like, oh, Joe, what? I've always thought that might be really beneficial to me. I asked him how much it was. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, a bottle of Jack Daniels is 20 quid. I was like, yeah, therapy's expensive. Whiskey's cheap. But again, it's that short-term fix for a long-term problem.
I'd argue it's not even a fix.
Yeah,
if it is a fix, it's a very, very short one.
It just stops you caring. But also as well, then we know that prolonged alcohol consumption, that causes depression, that causes anxiety. So ironically, it pushes you further.
If you've got
and further
another
down
cause
the
of
line.
depression and then you're already stressed, it's like you're just making your life even worse.
Yeah. I think another common one is when people are feeling particularly stressed is overworking. I know I've been prone to do that. Sometimes I'll stick at the desk until, arrive at 8 a.m., stick there till 7 p.m. And I was talking to the wonderful Miles George earlier today. We were talking about it. It's like, but the problem is you can only do max I'll generally work 9 hours a day, and if I'm really honest, I'd say 8 of those hours at best are quality. You can't sit there for 18 hours a day because it just feels like your eyes are bleeding. So that's another one. People overwork, whereas actually you'd be better off stopping, coming back in fresh, because by the end of a long working day, my output's at about 15% of what it should be. It's kind of counterproductive.
Yeah, I heard a really good analogy on this, and there's a fire going on, and you're constantly pouring water on it, and it's not going away. So you're at work, and you're working, and you're still stressed, and the workload's not going down. Keep pouring water on that fire, it's not working. Stop. There is another way to put out a fire, and that's stop the oxygen to it.
Yeah.
Look, step back, look, and go, right, there's a different way to go about this. Stay away and go, right, I'm going to plan out what I'm doing instead. I'm not just going to keep ploughing through this work because I'm working at 15%. You're going to go, no, I'm going to step back and go, right, how can I organise this? There's something called an Eisenhower metric, which is a really good thing to use to look at, right, is this a priority? No, right, you're going to the side. Let's put the priorities at the top of the list. Let's work through them. Once you've got them out of the way, you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not just fire, put that fire out, and it just never goes away.
It's that working smarter and not working harder. There's I appreciate there is a time to grind through things, but generally speaking, you're right. When it's like that, you need to take a step back and maybe reevaluate how you're doing things.
Yeah. Now, if you are already doing that and you're like, stop telling me how to suck eggs, I'm actually a really organised person. There's other things you can do. When you mentioned adrenaline is a big part of stress, you need to burn that adrenaline off. So if you're a really organised person, but you're not going to the gym, this might be for you then, because you're going to have that adrenaline built up. You've got tight deadlines, you are organised, but it's still getting to you. You need to go and burn that adrenaline off. You've got excess energy, you need to go get to a gym. Lift some weights, punch bag, whatever it is, whatever you enjoy, exercise will help.
Yeah, and exactly. So let's wrap that up nicely then. So, these are our top tips for how you deal with stress. We'll go over physical first, and like we said, then maybe we'll do a mental, and then I think we'll finish off with some really good supplements that can help people. But number one, without a doubt in my mind, exercise. Like what is it? So when we exercise, it is that release of endorphins at the end. It lowers the cortisol. It improves your mood. It relinquishes the anxiety. It gives you a good mind-body connection where you're getting working. Again, I think that's much more down to our ancient selves. We weren't designed to sit in our boxes and just go here. We were meant to move and work. And then also as well, depending on what you're doing, sometimes you go to the gym and slap your headphones on, that's great. But if you can do any sort of social sport, anything where you've got a bit of social interaction, anything with a bit of sense of accomplishment, especially anything where you're kind of with a group of people, a team, I think that's huge for relieving any sort of mental health issues. And this will be no surprise to you, 100% my first absolute go-to for resolving mental health issues physically, jiu-jitsu. Everyone should do jiu-jitsu because I think it takes this ancient element of battle and combat and exertion, but in the safest controlled way. You're in a big padded room, no one's hitting you or wrapping a shin round your neck. Someone's going to put you in a choke or an armbar and you just tap, and then at the end, you give them a big hug. That's what you do. Jiu-jitsu people are the friendliest people in the world, and I think it satisfies that sort of ancient sort of warrior spirit and survival instinct that you have. I also think the biggest win that it's ever taught me is after an evening of jiu-jitsu, or for me in particular, I really like doing MMA as well, but I don't think that's for everybody. I think that's quite a niche one. But I think with jiu-jitsu, you can be in a horrendous position, but it teaches you such a good life. Maybe someone's mounted you or they're putting a choke on you, but it really helps you to say, right, okay, I'm going to stay calm, I'm going to deal with this difficult situation. There is always a way out. There is always something I can do. So that's it in the moment. And then when I come to work the next day, I'm like, do you know what? A strongly worded email really is water off a duck's back when I had someone like trying to strangle me last night unconscious. So that's my particular, but I also think, running, I think, lifting weights. Anything particular you like to do?
Mine would be lifting weights. Yeah. I haven't done it in a while, but I definitely felt that when you're lifting a weight, and you said when you're in the fight, you're in that focus mode of all I'm thinking about is getting this heavy thing off of me, or heavy person off of me. That's it. I'm not thinking about the work emails. I am completely separated from work me. Almost severance to get that Apple TV show in there, but you're severing yourself from your work self.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm just focused on that. There's no stresses from anywhere else. It's just me, bar, lift. That's it.
You've hit it perfectly. It's freedom. It is doing something where in that moment you do not possibly have the mental capacity to think of anything else. Like you said, bar on top of you or anything like that. Or, really important as well, it doesn't have to be sports like that. Yoga. Love doing yoga. Work a lot on my mobility recently because I'm stiffening up. When you're holding a pose, when you're, your warrior 1 and warrior 2 and things like that, when you're leaning down, downward dog, you're not there thinking like, oh, God, right, got to go back to Gavin's email tomorrow. Okay, no, need to do that. You're just thinking right here, right now, hold the position, or lift the bar, or escape the arm bar. It sets you free. So I think that's why it's so important.
And I think that goes on to one that I learned this today. So I spoke to some of the guys in the office upstairs about what they do to alleviate stress, and this one really, really resonated with me. And it was no work emails on your personal phone.
Oh, I live by that. Yeah.
And I spoke to the guy, and he's like, I actually spoke to a doctor who said I have to calm down and come up with a stress plan, was I'm going to die early. The first thing he did was remove work emails from the phone. I don't mean no notifications. There is absolutely no Outlook on his phone. Now, I know some companies you might have a work phone. It's different. You might have to leave that in the office if that's the case. But completely separating the two. The moment you walk out that door, when your time at work is done, that is it. Those stresses are at that door. Now, granted, you might have a stressful home life, and that's a different issue, right? If you come from a stressful office to a stressful home life, then... But if your home life is okay, you can leave that stressful office, and then you can decompress. Yeah,
and I do follow that. So what I do is I'll take my laptop home. So if there is something I really need to do, I can get on it. But my phone is my phone. That's my time. I don't want it. I have to physically open the laptop and sign in to get hit with work. That's my choice. Whereas I don't want to be sat there and involuntarily hit with work. And I think one of the best things for me, with dealing with stress and anxiety, and again, I think this takes us back to that caveman state, is nature exposure. I'm really lucky. I've got a beautiful Labrador, and the benefit of it is wind, rain or shine, you got to get out and walk him. So actually, I'm lucky enough that I spend probably about an hour a day in nature, in the woods. And you don't have to have a dog, you don't have to go into the woods, but just moving that body, fresh air, away from your phone, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. I think that's proven to really improve your mental state, lower cortisol, things like that. So that's another huge one I'd always recommend, is going back to that sort of ancient way of living and spending time in nature, away from screens, which again, I don't think Gen Z are doing. I'm sure if you said, if we've got a 16-year-old right now and we're like, would you like to go and hang in the woods, or do you want to sit here with your Switches and your iPads? They'll be like, yeah, no question, I want to sit here and play video games.
Fair, when they are in the woods, they're probably out there drinking alcohol they shouldn't have, so that's probably not helping the stress.
Hey, we were all 15 once, weren't we? Yeah, absolutely. And then I think it's, other things, like we said, the social connection, just being with people who you love and who make you feel good and who you can just have a laugh with. I think there's no ends to the benefits of that.
Yeah, and I think boundaries it comes from that as well. As you mentioned, in your relationships, it's some people might be stressors, they might be stressed, and you've got to help your partners also separate that and be mindful about them. If they're stressed and you're stressed, both of you being around each other is not going to help.
No.
Don't force the issue. Just sit in a separate room, be mindful, do some yoga together.
Yeah.
But if you've got people around you that are all stressed, you need to go, look, you are stressing me out, or I might stress you out. Let's go do something to calm down.
We're making each other worse. We've got to get out of here. Yeah. And I think... So that's, what we can do physically. I think that's a nice, when it comes to your mental health, I've said about the sort of nature exposure. I think there's a huge benefit in meditation, mindfulness, I hate to say it, I've started this past week doing affirmations, which I love. If you're a terrible person, don't listen to affirmations because they'll just tell you how wonderful you are and it will make the problem worse. But it was one of those things I'd never appreciated. And if you can just do 10 minutes of meditation a day, and you know what, sometimes I cheat, sometimes I'll have some sort of affirmations playing as I'm driving in to try and save time. And again, I think just that positive reinforcement after a few weeks, man, do you really notice a difference in it when you just enter and start your day expecting good things and living your life with gratitude rather than going into work and like, oh, it's gonna be shit, because guess what, it is gonna be shit. But if you can at least tell yourself, hey, it's going to be a good day. You'll look for the good rather than looking for the bad. And I think that's a really important one that people need to take ownership of.
The mind is so powerful, and not some kind of are tricking the mind to think positively. And I've actually found a study here that anticipating a laugh will reduce your cortisol levels. Not just laughing, just anticipating a laugh. So that is if someone's saying you're going to go to your favourite place or you're going to watch a comedy film later. That was shown in studies and proven, and it was a good study as well. Yeah. We'll have the link in this, that it reduces the cortisol in the body.
Yeah.
And that is your mind thinking about happy things, making you better. You're not doing anything happy. You haven't even experienced the actual happiness yet, but just thinking about it has made you feel better.
No, I agree. And like I said, if you're looking for bad, you're going to see bad. If you're looking for the good, you're going to see good. So it's not tricking your mind, but it is reprogramming it.
Yeah.
To look for these things. I spent a lot of time last year really trying to rewire my mind to be in a more positive mindset, and it really worked. And I think it is achievable with some work. And I'm sure there are loads of people out there like, I don't want to meditate, I don't want to listen to that. Give it a go for 21 days, and if it doesn't change your life, we will. I don't know what we'll do. We'll send you a supplement factory hat. Not that I'm sure you'll want one, but so I think that's the physicality, that's the mental side of it. Now, if we go onto supplements. Before we take the physical supplements, I think things like the Whoop strap and the Aura rings, really interesting developments where they'll show your stress levels, show the heart rate variability and things like that. There's some really interesting information there. Whoop, sponsor me. Please send me one. I'll say good things. But I think Whoop straps, Aura rings, everything like that.
Finding a way to objectively look at your stress is a big one there, because then we're talking about, you might have this, you might have that. That will really help you drill down and go, no, you are.
Yeah.
And you can't argue with that. There is some much smarter people than me have built algorithms that will help you see, I am stressed or not.
Yeah.
And then you can work out, it's only happening at 6 o'clock. It's like, that's when I talk to my dad.
Yeah.
So that probably caused the problem.
I think one of our wonderful colleagues was telling us the other day that his partner's got one of the Aura rings, and he was like, we had an argument in the morning, and then I got home, we had an argument in the evening. He said he was looking at the trajectories, it's big spike, level, and that's when I got home, big old spike. And the alternative to that, I understand not everyone wants to do that or has the means to it. The alternative is kind of journaling, but I think it's really interesting now that there is, like you said, data that can support these things and really confirm how it is you're feeling.
Yeah, journaling does have its own biases, and you might be a little bit going, I feel this, and it's not quite aligned. So I recommend go to the technology route. I'm a nerd, so I like technology more than anything.
Yeah, but so technology's there to help us, but I think supplements are a really, really easy way, that something that everyone can do. They're not particularly expensive, that can have a real benefit. So in regards to stress and anxiety, what are some top go-to supplements that'd be helpful?
Number one, ashwagandha.
Yeah.
Got to be the best. There is lots of clinical studies that up to 30% in reducing cortisol.
Amazing.
That is huge. That is 30% is of anything is like, okay, I'm actually going to buy that. That's a good sale. That's a DFS level sale, that is. Ashwagandha, 100% number one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, you've touched on this and I've touched on this, adaptogenic mushrooms as well. There's huge benefit in so many of those. And I know I've really noticed an improvement in my cognitive function. And okay, you might not say they drastically are known for reducing stress and anxiety, but they certainly help relax, unwind, put you to sleep. Or the flip side, they help you to focus. And this is why there are products out there like these adaptogenic coffees, and I've mentioned them before, like Space Goods. Matt Kelly, we'd love to have you on, man. We're going to keep chasing you. But there's products like Space Goods where it gives you the boost of caffeine, but I don't have the anxiety, I don't have the jitters. It allows me to be elevated, but without the stress that would go with it, which is really beneficial.
And then a supplement to look for when you're trying to reduce stress isn't necessarily one that reduces cortisol. It's secondary effects. You said sleep. If you can find these mushroom coffees that help with sleep, having better sleep will in turn reduce everything else. It makes life so much better. And these mushroom coffees are fantastic at the sleep ones. I don't know if you've ever had one before, but they do knock you out.
No,
yeah.
I did. And again, but you know what? It's a restful, restorative sleep. It's not like a sleep where you woke up and you were sort of like, oh, I was just dead, but it is. It's so restorative is how it feels. I think as well, some other really, really well-known products that have been around for a long time that people might not consider as so beneficial is things like magnesium, which regulates neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA. It helps mood stabilization, relaxation. It regulates cortisol as well. And there's additional benefits, sort of anti-inflammatory, there's a bunch of bits like that again, there's no end to the benefits that you can get for some of these products.
One personal one that I use,
Please.
vitamin D.
Yeah, again, a super simple one.
Super simple. And I've been taking this, only a recent one really, because we all know in England we're not getting enough sunlight anyway.
Yeah.
So we know we've got a vitamin D deficiency off the bat just because of my bloody postcode. And it does help. Yeah. I have noticed a benefit, and it was definitely going to be a part of my life forever now.
Yeah.
Vitamin D.
No, fantastic. I think as well, other really simple ones that you don't even need to get from a Holland Barrett. So you get from any supermarket. So B vitamins, omega-3. I began taking years ago for the benefit of for my joints and things like that. But actually, they found that it really helps support brain health as well. So again, that's a 2-for-1 you're getting there. Not only does it help your joints, inflammation, mood, it helps with brain health. Mood regulating, reducing anxiety, and there's a bunch of also like may help with, but I won't shout those out now. But I think I'd lean on those.
Yeah. I think the key thing with all of these supplements is to understand it is still a supplement. I could take every single supplement we just listed, including ashwagandha, reducing 30% of cortisol. But if I have a messy lifestyle and I'm doing everything wrong and drinking heavy amounts of alcohol, it's not going to help.
And then you take 2 little pills and you're like, but that's sorted.
But why am I not feeling better? Bad Amazon review. It's like, that's not how it works.
I always think it's like, it's lifestyle and food first. I've always said the supplements are there to give us a helping hand. And like I said, if they can help you 5-10%, that's brilliant, especially for what you pay for them. But like you said, if every day, if every weekend people are out on the bag, they drink 4 nights a week, all you do is eat crap, you don't exercise. Yeah, you can't expect to take a fistful of capsules and then suddenly be like, even Stevens. So you're right, it really helps, but it is diet and lifestyle that needs to come first before we can rely on these. I think a few other ones that are worth mentioning as well that are probably less known, sort of things like rhodiola rosea, which enhances resilience to stress and mental fatigue. Panax ginseng enhances energy and mental fatigue. I'd say those two are typically found as a combination in other supplements as well. So you can get a really nice sort of pre-made stack that's got a lot of these components in there. Is there anything else that you'd recommend, Matt?
I think the last one would be CBD.
CBD, yeah, absolutely.
I think comes with a caveat, and we're going to talk more about CBD on the podcast in later episodes, but it's just be careful when you're looking for them. Go with a big brand CBD.
Yeah.
There's some testing issues. Just go into a big brand.
Yeah. And I think we'll talk about this in more depth. I think that's a whole episode in itself, but I think this is what people don't understand. Look, let's say we're buying CBD and we go on Amazon or whatever. Let's say there's one for £10, and let's say there's a proper brand and that's £30. People are like, well, I'm going to go for the £10. But actually, the extra money you're spending is in the scientific studies. It's in the proof of what this product delivers. And like you said, it's showing that it's fully tested. They've not accidentally just slipped something else in there, and the levels are what they should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, just had a minor brain fart there, so I'm just going to take a breath. So yeah, CBD is another really, really interesting one that we'll definitely do a bit more, a bit of a deeper dive on before. But I think, to summarise, I think stress and anxiety, it's a huge part of everyone's life. It's not going away anytime soon, is it?
No, it's not going away anytime soon. And all I can say is my one key piece of advice. You could leave this podcast with one piece of advice. I would say just take a step back. Yeah. If you're going through stressful things, if you've got a lot on your plate, just stop, take a step back, and look at it from an outside perspective. Because if you ever had relationship advice from your friend comes to you and he's having a problem with the relationship, and you're like, it's so simple, you just do this.
Yeah.
But when you're in that relationship problem, you're like, I have no idea what to do.
The outsider's perspective, absolutely. And just on that, changing the viewpoint, just before we head off for today and sort of wrap things up, CBT. So we've done CBD, so CBD, cannabis, CBT.
Cognitive behavioural therapy.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Give me some of that.
Rewiring how your brain works. Thinking about an issue. You might hear some certain words and think, right, I think I hear red and I think ball. Like angry, and actually you should think I see red and I see an awful football team, Arsenal. You need to rewire how your brain thinks about things. Now professionals do this, but you can do it yourself as well with mindfulness.
And one of the best reframes that I've done in my life that's really helped me, and I still use it to this day, is one of the best reframes I ever did is, instead of feeling sad and upset with the feeling of stress and pressure, I now see that as fantastic. I'm growing. This is development. This is what progression feels like. I'm feeling stressed. Well, good, because I can deal with it, and this is me moving my life along.
Pain
There's
is
no
weakness
growth
leaving
without
the
this.
body.
Exactly. And like I said, I think we do need to really be mindful and be open and talk about it. But also as well, I do think that there is a reasonable degree where you do get through it and you can use it to your advantage. But yeah, that's how I kind of work it. When I'm in a stressful position, I'm like, oh, well, life must really be going well. If I'm getting the pressure and the stress, it means that I'm doing well and I'm being given more to deal with here because I can.
There is millions of people that are envious of your position you're in.
Exactly.
Some people would love to be in a workplace where they're stressed because they've got so much other issues. It's like, be grateful, stop, take a look at yourself and go, right, this isn't the end of the world. Let's move forward.
And I think I spoke to Miles before on a previous podcast, and I said, those days where you think, oh, it's super quiet, I've barely got anything to do today. The last couple of days leading up to Christmas where you're like, oh, barely any emails coming in, barely any work to do. On paper, you're like, what a great day. Those are the worst days for me. I can't stand it. It's good to be busy and good to leave each day with a feeling of accomplishment. Whereas if you're in a dead-end job where you do the same thing every day and you're not happy there, that's what, it's hard being successful. It really is. Guess what? It's hard as fuck not being successful. It's hard as hell when you're like, my life's going nowhere, I'm miserable, I have no prospects. Choose your hard. Which hard do you want it to be? So thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. I hope you found it informative. I hope you've got something great there that you can share with friends or family, and just try out a few of these techniques. In particular, I think the exercise is probably my biggest go-to there. I think you need to make time for exercise, make time for some mindfulness, rest, and adequate supplementation. You need to perform at your best and to have a happy life and to not feel so dragged down with these issues. So I think, everyone can make 30 minutes a day to get fresh air, sunlight. When I say exercise, guess what? It doesn't have to be a grueling CrossFit workout or jiu-jitsu. You can take a 20-minute walk. You can take a 20-minute walk in fresh air by yourself. And I think just with 30 minutes, I know it's hard to find the time, but you've got to make it priority. Everyone can find 30 minutes to take a couple of good supplements, to take a deep breath, to get a little bit of exercise and mindfulness and set them right. Wouldn't you say, Matt?
Well, 30 minutes is about the length of our podcast normally, so I could put that podcast on and go for a lovely walk.
Hey, absolutely perfect. Brilliant. Matt, anything else to add today?
No, that's wonderful. I've really enjoyed this. I feel less stressed now, Harry.
Yeah, do you know what? I feel like a weight's been lifted off my chest. I feel like there's a 10 kg kettlebell sat there before we sit down for these, and I feel like it's just floated into the air. But yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming along, Matt. You're becoming a regular staple on the show. We absolutely love having you. Thank you everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment on what you'd like us to talk about next, and we'll catch you on the next one. All right, guys? Boom. We out of here, baby. The Fig Factor, there's no one like us. Only podcast you can truly trust. Oh, we out.